So I had not left my house for like a week, and today I'm like, I need to get out of my house. I am starting my new job next Monday. I'm very excited about this, and I think I was conserving my energy for knowing I'm going to need to travel. But honestly, I'm like, I need to get out of my house. So I came down here to sit by the water and wanted to apologize that I haven't gone through the book of Hosea more quickly. Um, it's tough. It's tough to read books that are kind of lengthy, and 14 chapters isn't real lengthy, but it's lengthy enough where the majority of it is judgment related. It's actually very tough for someone like me who's like positive, optimistic, to sit in like that negative space to go through something that's almost entirely about judgment and that isn't particularly short. It's good because we understand the history of why things had to change and that Christ provided that change and that there will be reconciliation and restoration in the future. But it's tough to sit in this space of bad things, of negativity. And so I've kind of been listening to other things that aren't specifically prophecy related, but just kind of interesting topical stuff to me personally. And one thing that I keep coming back to 100% of the time, which is why it's difficult for me to listen to folks that are on these quote unquote interesting topics, is because a lot of them are studying things that are not specifically biblical. They look at extrabiblical sources and then feel qualified to talk about things related to the church and the rapture. And I gotta tell you guys that I have yet to find someone who studies extra biblical stuff primarily who has any authority to speak on the rapture, because they do not understand dispensationalism at all. It is a ripe arena for just lumping everything and everyone together. And then it distorts their view of eschatology and the end times. This is something that I fail to understand completely, because it seems like there is such a short-sightedness about dispensationalism as it relates to the end times when people are fully aware that dispensations existed in the past. So it's like, from a historical point, they will acknowledge the difference in dispensations because, you have Edenic, Eden and the Age of Innocence, and then you move into Noah and the laws that began to be given to Noah, and then you move into Abraham with the Abrahamic covenant, and then you move into the Mosaic law and the Age of Law. It's like, we understand from a historical reference point that there were quote unquote dispensational changes or changes made based on covenants, which you can kind of make a case that those are sort of related to dispensations, which technically they would be. Because anytime there were new laws introduced, there was a different expectation from God. And so, yeah, you're still in the Old Testament, in the Old Covenant, but there were still different ways of doing things, especially when you move from Eden to out of Eden. And when sin and death entered the world, and then you've got specific things that were related to mankind and the administration of, I don't want to say laws and things like that, but then moving into Noah, where they were allowed to eat flesh, and then moving into the Mosaic law, where it's like, yeah, now you got to keep it out of the family, where before it had been allowed to be in the family. If you guys know what I mean. It's just, yes, there were different laws added because there was a different restructuring of how God wanted things done, and that's technically what's at the core of dispensationalism. Is there are different ways of doing things that God overtly states, and he's telling you by giving people new laws or new intervening events. Like the cross was an intervening event, which then set up a new way of doing things. And usually that's based on covenants. These covenants are God's ways of dealing with man. So when there's a covenant or a change in the laws that he's giving, it's his way of dealing with mankind in a different way than he had previously. So there was an Edenic covenant and a Noahic covenant and an Abrahamic covenant and a Mosaic covenant. There was an Aaronic covenant and Davidic covenant and a new covenant. So these are God's way of intervening in the affairs of mankind to say, hey, I'm going to do something different and I need you to be aware of this, and I'm going to deal with you differently based on these new laws. So this is what I fail to understand about these people who want to just throw all that away and forget that God has been doing this all along, all the way back in the garden, dealing with man through covenants and dispensations. And we just want to throw this away, forget it existed in the past, and say, for whatever reason, we're just going to lump everything together from here on out forever and ever until the end of time. And yet, these same people, well, unless you're a preterist or an amillennialist and have weird, crazy ideas about the kingdom, and you're not a futurist or whatever, we're going to just not talk about them because they're off their rockers. But if you are a futurist and you're a premillennialist at all, forget pre-trib, but if you're a premillennialist at all, then you understand that the kingdom is a dispensation for the future. So I, for the life of me, cannot understand why people decide to get their wires crossed from the cross to now and into the 70th week, when legitimately every single thing that came before the cross and every single thing that will come after the 70th week is dispensationally based. And we know this. Like, I don't know of any Christians who don't understand this about the Old Testament. Dispensations and covenants and the introduction of laws changed the way that God deals with mankind. And it was overt. Like, they're overt ways of understanding that God was changing the way that he was interacting with mankind and or what he required of mankind based on said covenant. I fail to grasp what everybody's major beef with this is right now. Do we think that he's choosing to I don't know. I don't understand this. Dispensationalism is absolutely 100% necessary to understanding the Bible from the beginning to the ending. And yes, that means in our present time as well. Again, how the world is right now, under new covenant, God is dealing with man in a specific way. And the dispensational aspect is they're going to go back to a different covenant, which cannot save them and is going to lead to their judgment. That's what the whole 70th week is predicated upon, is the intervention of a different covenant other than the one that God said is the one you need to do. And when they do something other than what God says is what they need to do, God's going to judge them for it. That is a dispensational change based on a covenant and God's overt intervention in the affairs of mankind as a result of man doing something other than what God says you must do to be saved. Same as before, same as in the future. And then kingdom is a dispensation also. It's a 1,000-year reign during which God is going to intervene in the affairs of mankind altogether differently than he has at any point in the past or the present. Meaning he's going to physically be on earth ruling and reigning for that 1,000 years, and there's going to be an age of righteousness. He's going to rule with a rod of iron. There's going to be peace, no war, things like that. So I understand that there is a failure to grasp the concept of dispensationalism, especially among those who stray outside the bounds of the biblical into these extra-biblical things, regardless of what they are. What I don't understand is why there is such a propensity to do that when the entirety of the Bible from cover to cover is based on dispensationalism and the introduction of covenants and the introduction of laws with those covenants that outline how God is going to deal with mankind and how he is presently dealing with mankind based on the covenant that we are under and what the meaning of those covenants is. There has never been a time that God has dealt with man outside of a covenant. The ones that get judged are the ones that are outside the bounds of the covenant. They don't have a covenant. Like, that's what's going to get people in the 70th week judged, is they're outside the bounds of the new covenant, meaning they haven't believed on the Lord Jesus Christ. They're not saved. And so after those who are saved get removed, the ones who aren't saved, who don't have that covenant relationship with God, are going to get judged based on the rules of that, rules of engagement. Is that they must believe on the Lord Jesus Christ to be saved. And yes, that's in the eternal capacity, but to also not be appointed to wrath in that capacity, which is what the 70th week is it's a period of wrath. So I just don't understand where this failure of dispensationalism grasping has come from, and why we can understand it about the past, and why the majority of people, like I said, who aren't millennialists or preterists or whatever, why the majority, or like these people, understand this about a future kingdom, understand that is inherently a dispensational change. And the 70th week is inherently a dispensational change because it's predicated upon a covenant, a rule change. And so I don't understand this. But for whatever reason, there's a whole bunch of blinders on to the idea of dispensationalism and God based on covenants dealing with people overtly in different ways. We understand it about the past. We understand it about the future. We should also understand that about the present.